Well, I'm going to start out by talking about the book, because, you know, that's what we're supposedly here for, and I feel kind of strongly about this. My publishing schedule, as you probably know, has been messed up because I'm supposed to do 2 books again this year, and I griped about it so vigorously with my editor that she finally said, fine, we'll just do 1. And instead of coming out in March and August, we'll just bring it out in July. And I said, that's great. And then the next one will come out July of next year. And the 3rd one, which I'm writing now, will come out in July of 2016. Wow. That's all I have to say. All right, so I'm going to read you something here about this. I was going to, give you a spiel about this series, but I think I'll read you something that someone we all know and love wrote recently. It says, it is the HIGH DRUID'S BLADE is the first book in the Defenders of Shannara series, and it is quite different from most Shannara novels. Beginning with The Science of Shannara in 1990, Terry began writing stories that were so large they couldn't be physically and economically bound in one book. Every successive Shannara tale has been published in sets of books, the story's epic in content and word count. Terry has wonderful fans, but they have also had to be patient. For those series, it took 2 years to get complete stories. But I have attended more Terry Brooks signing events over the last 2 decades than anyone other than Terry's wife, Judine. And fans continue to ask one question over all others. Will he ever write a standalone Shannara novel again? Terry, being the kind of guy he is, listened to his readers. The HIGH DRUID'S BLADE is the first standalone Shannara novel since First King of Shannara, published in 1996. Today's new Shannara novel has a beginning, middle, and an end. It has one unresolved thread that will become important in next year's book, The Darkling Child. But a reader can begin the HIGH DRUID'S BLADE, finish it, and feel quite an entire story has been told. I have no doubt it will make all of you quite happy. That is not the only way the new Shannara novel is different, though. For the first time in recent and current Shannara continuity, the HIGH DRUID'S BLADE is told from the point of view of a Leah rather than an Ohmsford. It makes for a very different kind of tale. Ever since Sword of Shannara, the Ohmsford family has been the principal focus of Terry's storytelling, but he chose to write about Paxton Leah, inheritor of the Sword of Leah, and his attempt to keep his family safe. The story does not feature a large cast of multiple points of view like other Shannara epics. It is far more personal. Terry has not written a story like this in the past, and the reader truly becomes immersed in Paxton's life and where that life is leading. I hope. You might be surprised where he ends up. I hope. The HIGH DRUID'S BLADE by Terry Brooks is, Now, this was written by Sean. You all know Sean Speakman, who has run my website for many, many years, and usually speaks for me on the Ask Terry and here and there on the website on Facebook, as well as on the website itself. And I want to say something about Sean. I don't usually like to say anything praiseworthy because it goes to his head. And then he wants, a raise, or he wants, special perks or benefits or days off, and we can't have that kind of thing. This is a business. But in this instance, I will say something. I had a discussion today over a pending project, which is fairly important, and with my agent in New York, and she said, "You are so lucky to have Sean." And I said, "Why is that?"
I hate her.
And she said, "Because in this day and age of social media, you absolutely have to have somebody like that, and you are lucky you got on the bandwagon early. Because so many of my authors now do not have anybody running a website, don't have a social media presence in the internet, and you simply cannot get anything to elevate your presence in the reading community if you don't have that." Now, this does not make me happy, but I know it is true. As you know, if you've been to any of my speaking engagements before, I'm not overly thrilled with social media, and my participation is pretty slim. Hence Sean, who does basically speak for me, and then I don't have to say anything. You can just assume that's me speaking. But it's great to have him, and he's been a huge benefit to me over the years, and as well as a good friend, and he has helped make my life immeasurably easier. And no raise. So this set of 3 books is something that I've been thinking about for a while. It is, in fact, a lead up to the conclusion of the series. I talked about this last year when I was here with whatever that last book was, Witch Wraith. And at that point I said, well, I'm wrapping this thing up while I'm still upright, and somebody else can't do it for me. So this is the lead up to that. And so not only am I writing a series of basically standalone stories with an interaction of characters that carry over from one book to the next, but also I am writing what is the preliminary setup for what I see happening in those last 3 books. Yes, it's a trilogy, because how can we not have a trilogy for the last 3? And so when you're reading it, you can bear in mind, or perhaps look for the tells that are in there about where this whole thing is going and what you can expect. It's interesting, I just did a Reddit the other day, and on the Reddit I got some questions that I thought, well, these people have been reading my mind, for crying out loud. They figured out what I'm going to do. I don't think they have, but they're just curious, and that's it. So for the next 3 years, those books will be the lead up, and then after that I will be tackling that final trilogy for a conclusion to the series. And after that, we'll just see where things are going to go, because I haven't really decided. What?
Everyone going to die?
No, everyone is not going to die. We don't do that. In fact, I just had another one of those questions too. Somebody who said, well, why don't you write grimdark? You know what grimdark is? Grimdark is a new phrase that refers to books written by people like Mark Lawrence and George Martin, and those are the books where it's very nihilistic. Everybody does die, and if they don't, they're bad anyway, so who cares, kind of thing. At least that's my take on it. But no, I am not going to do that, because that's not me. I'm a positive kind of guy, and I don't mind reading it, but I ain't going to write it, because I'm already depressed, and I don't need any further help with that. Thank you very much. So what's happening here before I read you anything? Well, there's this project, and I can't talk about it, at least not until shortly. But I can't talk about it right now. But if you want to know more about it, that I can't talk about, then if you maybe check the social media in the next day or two, you might see something about it. Now, I'm not saying that's for sure. I'm just saying it's a possibility. So you just might see something about it there that will be of interest. And then I have another project too that's a movie, and I don't know what to say about that one, because that's in development hell right now, as far as I can tell, with a screenplay that everybody seems happy with but me. And in this case, I do not have control over that screenplay, so I'm admittedly somewhat concerned about what I read. It's real good right up until about the last dozen pages, maybe 20 pages, when it just goes to hell. And I'm thinking, well, what's going to happen here? And I wrote a very nice letter saying, WTF are you people doing down there? And the guy I communicate with says, don't worry, we're going to bring in another screenwriter, he's going to change it, it's all going to get smoothed out, it'll be just fine. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's one of those promises that will be forgotten the minute the phone hangs up. But I live in hope, so we'll see. And I guess Steve Carell still is committed to this, and he at least seems to have his head on his shoulders about this whole thing. So I'm trusting that will solve the problem of the, at the moment, unsatisfactory screenplay that is presently kicking around. Let's see, what else? Well, I can't think of anything else. I'm going to read to you, I'm not going to read to you from the next book. And I'm not going to read to you from any book, actually. How about that? So what's left? This is a letter that was written just recently by a fan. No, that's not true. I'm going to read to you from 2 outtakes that I wrote recently and are online, but nowhere else. And you may have missed them, but if you haven't, you can read them later at your leisure if you choose to. But what I did, the way I envisioned this, Sean and I talked about this, the way we envisioned it was, I said, well, I want to do something to sort of get people involved in what's going on with this book before it comes out, because we're all about social media, aren't we? So I wrote these 2 3-page long outtakes. And what they are is, rather than writing something that has, that was excised from the book, that always bothers me somehow, like, this isn't good enough for the book, but I can read it to you, kind of thing. No. What I decided to do was write 2 scenes from the point of view of a different character in the scene. So you will read, I will explain each one of these, but in each case, it's a scene that's in the book, and you will read it. This is somebody else's point of view of that very same scene when it happens in the story. And I won't be giving anything away, I don't think, so it'll be all right. The first one takes place early on in the book. Well, both of these are, actually, these both follow on the heels of each other fairly closely, so they're both fairly early on in the book. But at one point early on, Paxton Lee, who is the main character in this particular story, this particular book, goes to help his sister out who's in big trouble. And she's been snatched up by a sorcerer named Arcanan and hauled off for purposes that are best left unexplained. And he's gone there with his friend Jayette, who is a young girl who is a friend of his sister's and has volunteered to come along and maybe help him out. So the scene that takes place is a confrontation in the book, takes place from Paxton's point of view. He is confronting the sorcerer and saying, "How about giving me my sister back?" And the sorcerer's saying, "Do you think you can take her?" So this is Jayette's view from where she's standing, where she can't be seen, just outside the door of the room in which the other two are conversing. Jayette was standing right behind Paxton when he opened the bedroom door, and she was about to peer around him when he suddenly shifted position to block her view. She might be a barmaid and a country girl, but she knew a defensive move when she saw one. Someone was in the room, and Paxton didn't want whoever it was to know she was out there, or perhaps for her to see in. She held her position behind him as he started talking. A deep, familiar voice responded. It was Arcanan, the man they had come to find, the man who had taken Chris and brought her here to Dark House. She shivered in spite of herself, remembering how it had felt even to be near him in the tavern. She did not care to repeat those moments. She held her place a moment longer, but when Paxton stepped forward, filling the doorway with his broad shoulders and tall frame, she slid smoothly to one side of him and flattened herself against the hallway wall. Was Chris in there too? She didn't have time or opportunity to see, and she hadn't heard her friend's voice. This wasn't working out the way Paxton had envisioned. If Chris weren't in there, their efforts would all be for nothing. "Did you bring any money?" Arcanan was asking. Jayette could see Paxton shake his head. "I don't have any money." "So you decided you would steal her back?" There was a note of false disbelief in the sorcerer's voice. "That's not very honorable of you. Didn't your parents teach you better?" The conversation continued, but the volume dropped and Jayette could not make out what was being said. She tried to think of what she could do, but there wasn't anything really. She had no weapons, and even if she did, she couldn't risk using them until they knew where Chris was. She was scared for her friend. They had shared wild times together, and both were overly reckless in their conduct, although Chris was much worse. Witness the fact that she was here. But she didn't deserve to become Arcanan's slave. The offer is only good for the next 10 seconds. Arcanan's voice was raised again, his words clipped and threatening. Paxton remained calm. "All right, you can have it, but only if you release my sister first." Arcanan laughed and said something. Jayette edged her way closer to the open door, determined to hear what was happening. A second later, there was movement inside the room. She could hear a shuffling of feet, and suddenly Chris was standing next to her brother. She seemed unsteady, her posture slumped and her head drooping. Her appearance was disheveled and her face stricken. Jayette almost reached for her, an automatic response to her instinctive need to help her friend. But then Chris straightened, seemed to recover herself, and faced back into the room towards Arcanan. From behind the corner of the doorway, Jayette saw Paxton lean in and kiss his sister's cheek. "Get behind me," he whispered. "Jayette is outside the door." There was a moment's hesitation as Paxton whispered something more, and then Chris was peering past him into the hallway. A second later, she was clear of the room. The minute she saw Jayette, she rushed into her outstretched arms. "I'm so glad you came," her friend gaped, hugging her tightly. "I was so afraid." "No more dice games with strangers for you," Jayette whispered back. Chris nodded quickly, smiling in spite of her tears. Inside the room, Paxton called out to them. Go downstairs. We have to go, Jayet said quietly, pulling on Chris's arm. Chris started to resist, not wanting to leave her brother. Right now, Jayet hissed. They backed down the hallway towards the stairs leading to the first floor, looking around for guards or customers as they did so. They saw no one. They were all the way up to the stairs when they heard Arkanen yell, "I'll finish you and go after your sister, and you will both be dead." Jayet practically dragged Chris down the stairwell, not giving her a chance to hesitate. "The Paxton is still back there," her friend cried out. In the next instant, an explosion rocked the entire building, and the girls were sprinting down the stairs like frightened cats. Okay, that's the first one. Now, because it's early in the book, everybody gets away. Nobody dies first chapters. Well, sometimes. In any case, this scene follows on the heels of that one, and it takes place at the landing strip where the airships are moored, and out of which Paxton and Chris have just gotten away. And a young man who's 14 named Grayling Kara, who is a fairly major character in this story, and he shows up again in the next, is watching them leave when Arkanen shows up. And that's what happens here. Grayling Kara stood watching as the tall Highlander and the two women who accompanied him boarded his airship and lifted off. With a quick sweep north, they were out of sight and quickly gone. That was one fast vessel, the boy was thinking, one accomplished pilot. This was the sort of man he wanted to be when he grew up. Capable and steady, a bit reckless sometimes, but never heedless. And those pretty girls with him. He wouldn't mind having a few of those follow him around either. It was well after midnight, the skies clouded and dark and the air thick with the smell of an approaching rain. He had been working at tying off the smaller aircraft and readying the airfield for what he imagined would be a deluge. The skies west were particularly dark, the clouds thickest there and deepest black with wind bursts coming from the same direction. Taken as a whole, it left no doubt as to where to look for the approaching weather to bring a change. Grayling hesitated a moment longer, looking off into the darkness where the Highlander ship had disappeared. He hoped they would be able to outrun the storm, but it was coming up pretty fast. They might have to navigate a rough patch or two to get through it. They might have to ride it out. Even so, he thought, what was his name? Paxton was more than capable of managing it. Putting the matter aside, he turned back to the job of tying down the light aircraft and securing the lines that anchored the maintenance buildings. Twisters sometimes appeared in weather like this, especially here in Wayford. It would be best to assume the worst. He was barely 5 minutes into his task when Arkanen appeared. He came striding across the airfield like an avenging wraith, his clothes tattered and soiled and his face dark with rage. Grayling would have run if he thought it would do him any good. As it was, he did the only thing that seemed reasonable and stood his ground. Arkanen swept up to him, snatched the front of his tunic, and pulled him close. "Where are they?" Grayling had promised Paxton he would say nothing of seeing them, but he knew instinctively that if he lied to this man, he would be caught out. "Flew out a while ago," he said as calmly as he could manage. The sorcerer's grip tightened. It felt like a steel band clamped to his clothing. "How many?" Grayling shook his head. "Himself, a girl, maybe two. I wasn't paying all that much attention. He was there all of a sudden and then gone. All I was just supposed to do was watch his airship and tell him where to find me. Did you do that?" "I did. I did what you told me." Arkanen released him with a push. "Talk to him, did you?" "A bit." "Did he tell you anything about himself? Anything unusual?" Grayling shook his head. "We talked a little about airships when he flew in. A few words about the Highlands. You, of course. He asked where he could find you, so I did what you said. I told him." He paused. "I asked about his sword. He showed it to me." Arkanen's eyes glittered. "What did he tell you about it?" "Said I might have one like it someday." "Nothing about where he got it? Nothing about how he came to be in possession of such a fine blade?" "Nothing." Grayling waited a moment as the sorcerer looked off into space, thinking. "I have to get back to work," he said. Arkanen nodded, and then held up his hand quickly to stay him from going. "You have been a reliable lad in the past. I presume you are being truthful and forthcoming with me here. The boy nodded. I am. No reason not to be. No, no reason at all. But nevertheless, if I were to find out later that you lied to me about anything, or that you held back information that I would find useful, it would go very badly for you. You understand that, don't you? Grayling nodded wordlessly. Because I hate liars. I hate those who play games with me. I wouldn't like it if I found out that was true of you. The boy kept his face blank. Can I go now? There's a storm coming in. I have work to do. He waited on the man, but no longer than it took for a nod to signal his release, and then quickly he turned away. He could feel the other's eyes on his back as he moved off. He could feel his skin crawl. So, now this was a great plan, but here's what happened. The plan was we were going to put one of these up on the website on the 1st of June and the other up on the 1st of July. Well, as I waited around for word from the publisher to go ahead and put the first one up, everybody forgot about it. So as a result, it went up the 15th of June. Then we forgot about the second one too. And I mean, we all forgot about the second one until about the day of publication, so it just went up. So if you didn't read it, I'm not surprised. I may try this again. I kind of like the idea, of doing something like this. I think it's better than an awful lot of stuff we do to promote things. I'd rather write something and have you, have a different look at something that I've done than this. And I don't know if I'll do this kind of reading thing again here. I just can bring myself to read Darkly Child because I've read it a few times before when I thought it was coming out in March, and now I'm kind of fed up with it, so I thought, I'm not going to do that again. So this seemed more entertaining to me, and I'm trying to entertain myself constantly these days. Now, other than what we just talked about, the only other thing is happening, and I don't know enough about this to tell you too much either. You can see how tight I am with the people that I work with. The people in Hollywood, they just can't wait to give me information, and the people in New York, they just want me to be happy too, so they tell me everything, but not this. So I have another book coming out, a remake of an illustrated version of Running with the Demon. That's coming out from Cemetery Press sometime. I do not know when because I have not been told, because I don't need to know. So therefore, I guess you don't either. But if I ever find out when this thing is coming out, I promise you we'll get it up on the website and on Facebook, and you will know. That's all I can say. I mean, it's so sad. I've been in this business now for more than 35 years, and no one trusts me still. And I'm one of the more reliable people they have to deal with for crying out loud, so I don't get it. So let's see. Other than that, my plans are unchanged. I still plan to do some other things in the future. I want to write some other types of fantasy and speculative fiction. I'm still working on some different things. I still have my young adult book that I plan to eventually get out there, but I'm not happy with it, so I'm going to have to rewrite it. I still have my middle grade book about the girl and the cat. I probably haven't read you from that one yet, but I'm still planning on putting that out there too. It's what the heck, I'm at a place now where I have to do some different things. Now, when I finish Shannon, is that it? No, I'm never going to finish that series because I've still got that stupid prehistory I have to write that I committed to years ago, and I have still got another 6 books or something to write before I can bring it to any kind of conclusion. So, and the other day, oh my God, you think, well, I'm covering all the bases here. Everybody's happy. Well, no, everybody's not happy. Now there's this big push to say, well, what about what happened before the Great Wars in the old world of fairy? Can't you write about that? No. Stop already. I can't write any more about it because there's no more time in my life and I don't have any patience for it. So this has got to be it. I just got to do what I can do here, and everybody's got to, you write your own version. It's okay. I don't mind. And if something happens to me, I'm sure, as I said, Brandon Sanders will step right in there and he'll do it, or somebody will do it. They'll get some. Anybody got a question about any of this nonsense that I'm talking about up here at this point? Anything you want to know that I haven't covered, or if you want elucidated? No, I can't elucidate anything at this point. Yes, sir.
At one of your previous events, you said you were planning on slowing down because it's hard to keep the fast pace. Are you successful in slowing down, or are they pushing you still?
You know, I don't know what the story is with this. Yeah, my plan was to slow down. And that's why I took this vow, not of chastity, but of being able to read every day in the later afternoon hours rather than just, working through. So I would have some downtime. And that's not worked too badly. But the pace at which I am writing does not seem to be slowing down. I seem to be writing at a quicker pace. I'm halfway through that third book, and I just started it in May. And I'm thinking, well, this isn't slowing down. What's your version of slowing down here, for crying out loud? But if I'm not working, I'm not a happy person. So it's probably better that I'm still working at this rate. I feel pretty relaxed about it all, though, right now. I think that if something should happen with the project I'm not talking about, that would give me a certain amount of freedom, right? Financial and otherwise, where I could step back a bit. But of course, here's the rub. This is what I would like to do, but my readers, bless their little black hearts, say, when's the next book? Why aren't you home writing the next book? Which is great, but it's not helping me at all with the slowing down part of things. So I guess we'll see. I'm not touring this year. This is it. This is it, and one signing at Powell's Books on Sunday, and my tour is over.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I just said I can't do it. I just didn't want to do it this year. I didn't want to go out again on the road. So I bagged Comic-Con and I bagged all the rest of it and said no, I'm not going to do it. Just stay home. And that's been actually been quite freeing. Of course, next year it'll be another story, and I'll probably do 2 or 3 weeks on the road. Then I'll be a wreck again. Maybe. Anybody else? Didn't you come here for Kevin Hearn when he was here? Yeah? Wasn't that funny?
Oh, that's great.
He's hysterical. That little guy. I don't know about
Watch the
him.
video?
What?
You watched the video?
No, I didn't watch the video. I was here.
I think it's on our website. You should check it out.
All right. Did I miss something?
He had this long talk about the term I don't want to repeat, really.
Okay. Oh, no, I remember that. I thought that's when the wheels came off, was when he got into that. But that's another story. And I'm not talking about that either. It's more grimdark stuff, so I'm not, after a fashion. Okay, what else can I talk to you about? If anything else you want to know? No? Yes, ma'am.
How long are you planning to make the Magic Kingdom of Landover?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
How long are you planning to make the Magic Kingdom of Landover series?
How long am I planning to make the Magic Kingdom of Landover series?
Yeah.
Well, if they make the movie at least one book more. I don't know, I wrote that last book, Princess of Landover, and if you've read that book, you know from the end of it that there's clearly something else coming, and there is. And I will write that book at some point, but I'm trying to match the timing to the release of the movie, if the movie ever gets made, or else I'll just have to write it anyway, and that'll be that. But that's kind of why I'm stalling out. And also now I'm really engaged back in Chandra, so I'm going to finish that up first before I do it. But yeah, at least one more, and I don't know, after that I'd have to step back and see. Obviously there's a lot more you could do with it, and now I've kind of shifted gears and gone off with Messiah. But I don't know. I really don't know. I think it'll be one of those things that I'll decide somewhere along the way whether that's something I want to continue or whether that should be the end of it with that last book. Yes, sir.
Do you think, I guess with, how you're talking about, stuff on the website or just getting feedback from people and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's actually more of a, I don't know, is it almost more work, is it almost more trouble to almost hear all the feedback from everyone? Does that make sense? Do you see what I mean?
Oh, you mean is it troubling to me to read all the feedback from readers about what they would like me to do and where I would go and what a crappy person I am? I'm not kidding you. You know, I had somebody on Reddit the other day say, you were once described as the greatest rip-off artist of all time. And I thought, man, I'm the best at something. I learned early on, I had a really good teacher in Lester Del Rey, and he said, look, a lot of people are going to love your books, and a lot of them are going to hate it. And don't pay attention to either one. Just don't. Just be true to yourself. Write the stories the way you think they need to be written. Keep yourself on an even keel, you know, and don't spend your, well, he would have said this, is, as I've said to many writers, do not spend your time on social media reading about yourself. You know, along with don't go to conventions and let people tell you how wonderful you are. Don't do that. You know, remember what your job is. Remember what got you here to where you are. So I read some of that stuff. Well, I really don't actually, but I do it on the Reddits and some of the other things, and people make comments, and and here people say, well, are you going to do this and that? And that's fine. I don't mind that. I just think that's part and parcel of what goes with the job. But you have to remember, first and foremost, to listen to your inner self there about what you think is important. And I have to tell you that a lot of times readers give me thoughts about things that I didn't have that are very helpful. So it's not as if I'm thinking when I'm listening to this, oh, brother, another one. I don't see it that way. And frequently, for me, every question is the first time for the person asking it, you know. So you have to remember that. I've answered it 100 times or whatever, but not you. But also sometimes it suggests things that are very useful. Nobody ever gets any credit, of course, but it's very helpful, I think. You know, you just have to winnow it all out along the way somehow.
I guess it's just because a lot of the stuff that I've read that you've written, it seems like I don't necessarily know if it's entirely like you're saying. Sometimes it might be helpful from other people, but it seems like a lot of it I think comes from you. Obviously in the way that you write it and stuff. So it's very unique, I guess, in a way that. You
mean when you're talking about the stuff that you read that I've purportedly have written? You mean like on the website? And
No. I just mean in the books and stuff in the novels.
Oh no, everything is what I write all that.
Yeah. I guess it's nice to see that. I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of important. I don't let anybody write anything that isn't.
Yeah, I've seen like a lot of collaboration sometimes. From
I'm not. Does not play well with others.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning of all this, nobody really wanted to play with me, so I decided, screw them. Never going to play with me. What do you think of that? I'm just better off working by myself. I really am. I'm kind of independent. I have a very strong independent streak. I kind of have a pretty strong sense of what I want to do, and frequently when somebody comes aboard and says, well, let's do this, and I say, you will regret that to your dying day if I say yes, so let's not. Let's just be friends. It works so much better that way. I don't even mind fan fiction very much. I think that's fine. I think it's an homage, as it were, about what somebody thinks about your work, and that they think enough of it to want to duplicate it, or they want to write something as similar, or they want to pursue the story in a different direction, and so on. I don't get upset about stuff like that. I think that's okay. I really do. Anybody else? Yes. Wait, you had a question. This is two.
Well,
all right,
are we at the second yet, or are we at the first?
Go ahead.
I was trying to envision your meetings with Sean, your social media person. Would you characterize it a little bit like the president, the press secretary, or how would you characterize it?
Exactly like that.
Well, if you listen to him, it would be best if you don't listen. I would characterize our relationship as familial. Oh. In fact, Judith and I refer to ourselves as Sean's second parents. Now, he has very nice first parents, but they didn't quite finish the job. So we are attempting to do our best to bring him all the way into the world of reality. And so, I mean, we have a really good working relationship, but we also have a friendship beyond that too. And he knows me well enough because he ran the website for 5 years before we partnered up, and he came to me and asked to be the official website. He ran it for 5 years, so he knew, he still does, he knows the books and what's going on, and he knows me pretty well, so he's able to pick up on the things that will, what are you laughing at back there?
Zombie cribbage.
Zombie cribbage, oh man. Somebody asked me the other day what I do for board games, what's my favorite board game? And I wrote Scrabble. And I could hear the silence in the background. The zombie cribbage could have replaced that. Anyway, it's a good relationship, and it's easy. We're easy with each other, and I don't think either of us, we'd have to work pretty hard for one of us to piss the other off thoroughly. So that's good, I think. Okay. Yeah, yes, sir.
You've been running this sort of series for a long, long time, and you've created a whole world. How do you keep from getting sort of bored with it?
Well, that's a good question, and it's increasingly a good question as I get older. As you might guess, I mean, when you've been working in a world for what really amounts to more than 40 years, 45 years, oh God. I have to have a drink of water and a tissue. So anyway, yeah, when you've been working in something that long, it is something of a challenge to stay focused and energized by it. And I think the fact that I work in historical epic generational skipping format allows me to do that because I can kind of start over with each set of books and change things around, and it doesn't feel like I'm just doing the same thing again with the same characters, which would drive me berserk. I could never write mysteries, for example, because I would kill the detective after book 5. Move along, so that helps. The main trick is, though, that I always have to get myself worked up about something before I start a story. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I have to find something I really care about that's at the heart of the story. And that's become increasingly difficult because, I've pretty well gone out there with most of the things that have bugged me over the years. And this time, on this current book I'm writing, it's kind of interesting because I started the book with an idea of what I wanted the story to be about. And I got about 5 chapters in, and I did a big right turn and said, no, this is more interesting. Let's go this way. Still keep the other plot line in there because I thought the other plot line had validity, but I really liked the concept for the rest of the story. And so now it's it's different than what it started out to be, and that's very energizing. To you discover something new about the story as you're working your way through it. It happens almost every single time for me. And I think you have to stay interested enough in the story during the course of it that you don't let down and your readers say, well, I got to sleep here, what's the story? You have to keep the level of the storytelling up there, and that means you have to keep yourself up there. And sometimes I just have to walk away for a while too and start, give myself a break and come back and be refreshed. And you have to be open to those changes. That's the creative part, I think, is where you're developing it as you go rather than, I don't outline like I used to. Remember I used to stand up here and say, oh, I outline everything. I did. I was like that, but I'm not that man anymore. Clint Eastwood, the forbidding. Or whatever it is. I'm just not like that anymore. I'm more fluid, I guess is the best way to put it, about the way I develop stories. I kind of like that. Okay, I don't want to keep any longer. You've been great, as usual. Thank you very much for coming down. I know that you'll want to stay close to your computer this weekend. And I will, next time I'm here, next year, I'll say, how many of you saw that? No, I won't. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate your support, as you know, and especially after all of these many years. My longevity is starting to become something of a banner of pride, so thank you for supporting me.